Yo, what is up YouTube? It is FX here with another video. I am sorry that it's been a while since I put out a new analytical type video. I have been kind of busy, but thank you to anybody who checks this out anyway. Now you may remember I put out a couple videos on the weapon efficiency, but just yesterday the devs have added 8 new weapons and rebalanced the old ones. So you know what time it is? Time for another weapon efficiency video. Now, you may remember in my past videos, first I laid out all the weapons and their materials, and then brought up the corresponding text sheet. So we're going to do things a little differently here today. I do have all the weapons laid out, starting at the top here with the 3 religion unlocked weapons, which of course are the Serpent Stamped Stygian, Yawgite Cudgel, and of course the Phoenix Engraved Broadsword. Below that we have our steel weapons, which I'm not going to bother to go through and name. You can read the text. It's pretty simple. All the steel weapons are here. And below that we do have all of the iron weapons as well. Now there are a couple that aren't in this list, which I will talk about at the end of the video. So if you don't see your favorite short spear or axe or whatever it may be, hold your horses. Finally, at the bottom we have the named weapons. These are obviously going to be the hardest to get since you need the corresponding NPC, but they are the Tulwar of Amir Karum, El's Drinker, the Dagger of Nameless Days, the Sledge of Sotha Lanti, and the Gavain's Rusty Pike, and if I said those wrong, don't hate me. This time around, I've put all the data directly into a spreadsheet, so we'll be able to work with it a lot easier. First thing I want to draw your attention to is the red text, and that is your sorted efficiency values. Now, a lot has changed in this rebalance, so we're going to check that out sort of one section at a time. So the religion unlocked weapons all got major buffs. They all do 125 damage now. Their efficiency rating went way up. And the Yawgite Cudgel in particular doesn't even take any iron. It only uses the unblemished hearts. The reason I counted the heart and meat and essence as a material is that it's arguably harder or more time consuming to farm those than it is just to get some iron. And you can see the Yawgite Cudgel just absolutely devastates the other weapons simply because it doesn't use any iron. You'll also notice that the stamped Khopesh uses 50 hearts. It does do a lot of damage, but that is a lot of corpses you're going to have to farm. If we take a look at the steel weapons, we see a very different picture than last time. Now, you'll remember before that the steel trident had 960 durability, which has plummeted to a measly 500, although they did raise the damage. It's also worth noting that, finally, the exceptional and flawless longswords are the highest efficiency, whereas before, it still wasn't really worth making them over the Khopesh. However, you can see now that the ancient Khopesh has a 5.5 rating, meaning it's gone way up. In fact, if you look at all the steel recipes, it's the highest efficiency without a thrall. Now, something else I want you to notice here is that they've introduced armor penetration as a percentage in this patch. Now, we're going to talk about that more later, but that does come into play when we're looking at the Ancient Warhammer, which also saw massive buffs, up to 164 damage with 590 durability, although you'll notice the efficiency rating is still on the low side for that. It is a bit disappointing to see that the Sumerian Battle Axe, while doing good damage, has very low armor penetration. Moving on to iron. There's not a whole lot to see here except one really notable thing, and that is the improved Falcutta. Now you'll notice that the durability is only 315, but the damage has gone up to 94, and that's for only 20 iron. That actually makes it the highest efficiency non-thrall iron weapon, not counting the throwing axe of course, because you're throwing those. The only one that's higher is the Exceptional Cutlass, but again, you're going to need a thrall to unlock that recipe. Damage has been buffed pretty much across the board for all of these, and durability has sort of taken the opposite direction for all of them as well. The Iron Pike has been unseated as the king due to its significant drop in durability. The last thing I want to point out in the iron weapons are the buffs that the Warhammer and Stygian Spear received in damage, up to 90 and 96, so they have sort of entered into iron weapon powerhouse zone, although they're still kind of low on the efficiency rating compared to the Falcata. And last but not least, for named weapons, I didn't spend too much time because it's not going to be necessarily easy to get these unless you get really lucky. But looking at them anyway, you can see that the Rusty Pike and the Sledge, both of which I guesstimated to take 15 iron based on previous recipes, are up at 142 damage each with over 500 durability. That puts them at massive efficiency ratings if those materials are the correct ones. Now, interesting to note, even if the cost is 30 iron instead of 15, that efficiency rating is still in the 25 to 27 area, still making it the top. El's Drinker, which is a steel longsword, and the Tulwar of Emir are also both really nice with 114 damage and a 9.35 efficiency rating, while the Dagger of Nameless Days, still doing 92 damage, remains pretty low at a 6.07. So I promised we would talk about armor penetration. The way armor penetration works is it's a percentage of your actual armor. So for instance, with the steel longsword that does 13% armor pen, if you had 100 armor, it would penetrate through 13% of it, reducing your armor from 100 to 87. Whereas if you only had 50 armor, 13% of that's going to be significantly less, only 6 or 7. So in order to find the adjusted change in efficiency, we first had to find how much damage would a weapon do versus a certain amount of armor. Now I used 100 armor as a base since full heavy armor is 93 and only 7 points in agility would get you to that 100. And what this allows us to see is that the weapons are going to do a bit less damage than you think they're going to do versus armor targets. And because of that reduced damage, it's going to change your efficiency as well. In fact, it changes it quite a bit. If we look in just the percent of change in efficiency, we can see that some items lose up to 50% of their efficiency or more. Other weapons are only losing 10, 11%. The lowest change in efficiency happens to be the Ancient Warhammer, which only loses around 9% change of efficiency versus a 100 armor target, whereas a weapon like the Iron Poniard or an exceptional broadsword is losing almost 45% of its efficiency against an armor target. Now, I also did the damage versus 75 armor versus 50 armor and versus 25 armor, which yielded similar results. But those results are also consistent versus 100 armor, so we're just going to look at that data for the purposes of discussion. At this point, you may be wondering how I figured out how much damage it would do based on the different armor types. So I want to show you just really quick how I got that. We already had our mitigation data, so we knew that at 0 armor you mitigate 0 damage, and we had similar data points. So I plugged these data points into a polynomial equation generator, and I took that equation, plugged it into Excel, and then used the damage difference as our X value. So we're basically seeing the scale or the curve of the mitigation. And as a result of that, we can see how much damage a weapon is going to do to an armor target. There were a couple weapons that didn't quite make the lists, and that's because they either had so low durability, or they didn't use any relevant materials, or their damage was just so low that they were kind of irrelevant. I put them here just for you to see, but I didn't want you to think that I left them out. So to conclude, the devs have made quite a few changes. Most of them actually pretty good. They've brought a lot of the weapons closer together in terms of performance, making less disparity between weapon types. The major takeaways that I want you to have with you are this. Religion weapons are godly. And I don't really intend the pun there, but it's there. They are godly. They do a buttload of damage for very little materials. Second takeaway is that if you're PvPing, somebody in your squad better have that Ancient Warhammer, because it has the most armor penetration, the most damage, and the least change in efficiency versus an armored target, which is actually more important than you may think. Also, if you do have access to the exceptional or flawless longswords, I would pump those out like candy. The steel trident used to be on top, but now it's sort of in the middle of the pack. It's definitely still useful for its range and its thrusting attack, but it is no longer the king. If you're still stuck in the Iron Age, Falcata is going to be your best friend. You're going to want to pump out Falcatas left and right because it has a massive 14.8 base efficiency, massive 94 damage, making it the second highest damage in all the iron weapons. Again, if you have access to the exceptional cutlass, definitely make those, but even then you're still doing less damage overall than the Falcata, which I would recommend making lots of. And finally, if you do have access to the named weapons, that's great, but I would probably pass on the dagger. The other four are pretty good, especially the rusty pike and the sledge with their massive efficiency ratings. I hope this video has helped you out. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I do still have all this data saved, so if there's some chart you want to see or some extra comparison that I missed, please let me know in the comments. Be sure to like, share with your friends, and stay tuned for more.